Good evening, all. Today is March 17th, 2022. I call the Village of Buchanan Planning Board meeting to order. Would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the
Allegiance to
flag
the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God, indivisible,
liberty
liberty
and
and
justice
justice
for all.
for all.
Thank you. Okay, you all received the minutes of 17 February 2022. May I have a motion to accept the minutes as read? Is there any changes that need to be made to it before can I have a motion to accept it?
Motion to accept.
Motion by Wilda and second by Jennifer. Hey, Marcus, I have one question before I start. The accessory dwelling unit, the ADUs, the governor pulled the proposed budget. Is that going to affect anything with the village as far as accessory apartments or mixed building uses?
No, the governor pulled that from the budget, so that's been pulled, but Harkham's office, it still has a bill outstanding. So it's still being discussed on the floor, but the governor's proposal has been pulled. So at this point, there's no legislation changing anything at this point.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so can I have a motion to continue public hearing on calendar number 1-22 PB for the special permit application accessory apartment for 172nd Street? So I need a motion to.
Motion to open the public hearing.
Motion, yes.
Second.
Motion by Eileen, second by Tracy. Okay, so tonight we will hear from the council for 172nd Street. We will hear from the building inspectors on what was written up last month and what was corrected. And then we will open up to public information as far as questions and concerns. And each of them will have 5 minutes to speak. So at this point, we will have Mr. McCarthy start his briefing.
Very good. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Basically, it's a continuation of the application that we submitted several months ago. I would just note that, and we talked about a couple of things last time when we were here speaking substantively, that the basis of the application, that the property conditions all meet the criteria for approval for a special permit under the village code under 211 section 22, section 211-22. Does the board want me to go through each one of the conditions? I think we did talk about this. Obviously, it's the property is owner occupied. Yolanda Infante lives there with her elderly mother. The person that is occupying the accessory apartment is her cousin. We submitted to the board a letter from the cousin explaining her circumstances and that she has been living there for the last number of years. Yolanda advised me that the cousin doesn't pay rent to her, but she performs services and helps out with her elderly mother, taking her to the store and assisting her with things around the home. And so she's been there a number of years. Again, basically, I think based upon the inspection from the building inspector, we met there several hours. We followed up with a further submission from an architect who's online, Mr. Mandra. We made a final submission showing the occupiable space and that the accessory apartment meets the requirements. The final as-built drawings show that the square footage is 589 square feet, which is within the allowable provisions under the code. And it's also 19% of the total square footage or area of the entire building, which is well below the 33%, which is you can't be over 33% under the code. So that's basically all I have to add. I don't know. My apologies for Yolanda. I know she texted me. She said she got stuck in traffic, and my office is down. I don't know if you all know, by the tavern. And today's St. Patrick's Day, and she's probably circling the block trying to get a parking space right now. But I expect she'll be here any moment if anybody has any questions and wants any further input from her. But I think basically that the application and the information submitted shows that we meet all the requirements for an accessory apartment. It's within the spirit and the character and intent of the legislation, and we'd ask for approval. Mr. Cook, is there anything to be added? I know you had some further follow-up with the architect and information submitted.
Basically, at this time, the square footage meets the requirement. A few things had to be altered to make that happen. The bathroom in the basement level of the home that was done prior to Ms. Infante's ownership. They've come in, taken the permits, and I've done the inspections. That's in the process of being finalized. The other items I had requested have been addressed. There were 2 doors in the basement. They've been removed. Basically, everything else is as it's supposed to have been to move forward on this.
Do we have any drawings to share online?
I submitted the drawings to everyone and blew the pictures up several weeks ago. So everyone had them to read them and go through them. Did no one receive them? I sent it out to the whole
No,
board.
Peter, part of the public hearing is, do you have it on your email or does the attorney have, we can share the screen? If you have a copy of it, we can put it up on the screen.
I can help you guys out with that.
Yeah, so
Can you-
yeah.
Thank you, Marco. I apologize.
I'm technologically challenged. Thank you, Marco. I
Yeah,
would also note, Yolanda's here now. She made it through the traffic, so.
So, Marco, you can share your screen and show the board anything they want to see if you can bring it up.
yeah. Let me know when everyone can see the plans.
Got it.
There we go.
All right, so I'll start from the basement. This is the lower level. This is the door Mr. Peter mentioned that we're removing. As he mentioned, everything else was in order in the basement. Moving up to the accessory apartment, some of the things we noted were the ceiling heights. So per the code, anything under 5 feet under a sloped ceiling is not considered accessible occupiable space. So these dashed lines indicate the 5-foot ceiling mark. So the square footage is being taken from those areas in this particular room. And then as well as we've removed the door to make this an inaccessible closet. And we've added 1 partition here to make this space inaccessible as well. And by doing so, this reduced the total occupiable square footage to 589. So if I go to my table, so this is just a small diagram. The gray hatch indicates the occupiable space, which is 589 gross square feet. And this is just a small table. The percentage of gross floor area permitted is 33%. We were at 20.6. And then by reducing the accessible closet and space by the bathroom, we're now at 19%. Let me know if you want to go back to the plans or anything.
Does any of the board members have any questions for the plans? So Peter, last month you wrote up things that they had to correct. Can you go over what was corrected?
Basically, what had to be corrected was again, not related to the accessory apartment, aside from the closet door being removed. It was in the basement was the issue with the bathroom that was not legal. The permits have been taken out. The work has been legalized and ready to be closed out to make that correct. There were 2 doors in the basement that segregated one side of the basement as it could have been deemed as a room. So the doors were removed and the frames were kept intact. So the basement is an open area from both sides and a bathroom as a recreation room. And basically they've taking care of those items that I've requested.
So the dwelling meets fire and safety aspect as
Yes.
far as the village inspection.
Yes, the electrical permit that was taken out was also part of the inspection to install the correct amount of carbon and smoke detectors that were needed throughout the entire dwelling, and that was accomplished.
Okay, thank you. You can stop sharing your screen with the drawing, please.
Thank you, Marco.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, all right, can we, Marco, is anyone on the public that want to speak?
Yes, we got one hand raised. Mr. Timko, I'll let him allowed to speak now.
Can I ask one question? Sorry.
Sure.
What is the parking? What is parking situation? Can you explain that, Mr. McCarthy?
Yes, it's my understanding there's 2 off-street parking spaces on the property adjacent to the house and in front of the garage.
And that's all that's required for the household?
Code requirements, yes. Yeah,
Okay.
and the household. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Timko, you can unmute yourself and you can speak.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Yes,
Okay. You just mentioned the parking. It's a single driveway. There's no off-street parking. There's no parking in the front. There's no parking adjacent. It's a single file long driveway that every time they're moving the cars around, that they're directly across the street from me, bother me and everybody else around. So every time there's people in that house, they're jockeying the cars around. Okay, as far as the upstairs square footage, you can see in the file, everything that was submitted, it was 749 square feet. It was also submitted, there was two bedrooms, one in the front and one farther back. Okay, so now you're gonna extend closets out, take the square footage, but technically, you don't consider closet square footage, it's still the square footage upstairs. Okay, you have all these, she's had, as far as the upstairs tenant that's living in the unapproved accessory apartment as admitted by her attorney. She's been living there. She's always been living there in an apartment that's not approved. Okay, so that right there is something that shouldn't be done. Okay, she's had renters for 21 years. Okay, the original building inspectors, okay, long before these gentlemen are in, they had the people removed because they knew it was 749 square feet. And she advertised as a 2-bedroom apartment in her own, it's in Penny Saver, it's in your own file, in the file that was submitted. We sent all the paperwork. There was somebody in the basement, as I showed, for 8 years with you left with a mattress on the roof of his car.
Hey, Mr.
And you can
Timko,
see if you look at
Yeah,
the
that's an echo.
Mr. Timko, you have someone else speaking behind you. It's kind of confusing, so that.
Okay.
whoever's speaking behind
Now-
you can stop.
I apologize.
Okay, now, if you look at the floor plans for the basement, this gentleman that used to live there for 8 years or whatever, always went in the back door of the house, never went in the front door, always the back. If you look at the floor plan, it's a very large room to the left, and it's actually a closet on both ends of the room where there was 2 doors. So obviously, that could have easily been a bedroom. You have closet space. Why would you have closets in the basement if it wasn't being for use as that? Now, also, the floor plan that was submitted actually by her and by others showed the downstairs as a TV room. But, you know, the last time there was a meeting, you said it wasn't a TV room. So there's been renters in this house, illegal renters illegally. Now, for 2 apartments downstairs and upstairs for 21 years that she's owned the property. Now you have to take into account what's going on this street. Okay, there is 5 multifamily houses on this one street, just on this one section. You have the 203 Tate, 207 Tate. You have a duplex up the street on the top of 2nd Street on the right. There's another multifamily, and you have a daycare. So the amount of traffic and noise and the driveway that she's mentioning, that whoever mentions adjacent to her, is for 203 Tate, which is another house, not her. She has a single file driveway, which especially in the wintertime when the parking, off-street parking is at 10 o'clock, all the cars get moved around at 10 o'clock. And it's, I don't know how you can change the square footage of, it's already been listed and already been denied for the history of this house. And she's been renting it out. And as far as for 21 years, and as far as the upstairs tenant, she goes to work every morning and is out all day and comes home at night. So when she's taking care of this elderly mother, I don't know. But the mother's doesn't have problems. She goes out gardening herself in the summertime. So this is all a
Mr.
big,
Timko,
yes.
who's in behind you speaking?
This is Mrs. Timko.
Okay, Mrs. Timko, if you want to speak after.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to have him remember. It's just very frustrating that you guys are now going to change the size of closets to try to make this work when a woman has been doing this illegally for 20 years. And we've been putting up with it, and it's been affecting us in a negative way. You have other neighbors that have been affected by this. You have houses that are right next door that are duplexes that have parking for 4, but
They have
there's
7
parking for
cars.
four, but there's 7 cars there, and the cars are all over. So this woman has been lying. We have a picture here that she has had somebody in her basement. I've talked to Teresa Knickerbocker about it. We've had meetings with her. We had meetings with this village about it. Police were called one time because that's what happens when you have too many people in a tight little area. And we even had a picture that we showed you when we sent to the board where the guy was leaving with a mattress. Now he lived there downstairs. The girl, Monica, I'm sorry, I don't know her last name, was living upstairs already, and she's done it. And now you're just gonna pat her up because she gets an attorney. She claims things are unsubstantiated. Nobody's been harassing her. In fact, she's gotten away with it for 20 years. That's the total opposite of that. And now you guys are now going to change closet sizes to make an upstairs that is 749 square feet that was in your own files into a 500 square foot. It's outrageous. You have known we've complained about her doing this. We've had for years, we've complained about it. And now you're just going to pat her on the back and give her a little, okay, you can do this. And what does that send the message to this village? You've taken the charm, and another thing that.
Chairman, have they exceeded their
Hold
5
on,
minutes?
hold on.
It's
Please
my
stop.
Yeah, we're talking.
Mr.
We're
McCarthy,
talking.
Mrs.
Excuse me.
Timko,
We're
Just let me
talking.
finish my one sentence, please.
Marcus,
Just
can
my
you
one
mute
sentence,
both of them,
please.
please?
My one sentence, please. Another thing that was in your code is that it cannot be a 2-bedroom. You're now, instead of that, you changed it and you're listing the word office, but it is a 2-bedroom. And she was listing it as a 2-bedroom. That was right in your own penny saver, 2-bedroom. And she had it as a 2-bedroom, and you kicked out all the people that were upstairs when she did it 20 years ago. Well, guess what? She continued continued doing it for 20 years. We've been
Okay,
there for
Mrs.
30.
Timko, that's
Not just
enough.
her, the people before her,
Now,
also the
one more
Dragos did.
thing, I just want to
Thank
mention too, it says your code has to take into account
That two-
the amount of multifamily housing in the existing area. Okay, like I said,
That's
there's
a
all these,
2-bedroom
and there's also a
apartment.
2-bedroom house and your single driveway. It affects our quality of life. Everybody around here, every single weekend, she has people coming, 3
Same.
cars at a time, 2 cars at a time, all these people. If there's no room, where are these people sleeping? There was the weekend after supposedly somebody had COVID, she came home an hour later, and then the day after that, she had 3 cars full of different people.
All
3
right,
car
Mr.
loads.
Timko, that's enough
Chairman.
there. Okay, so basically, does any of the planning board members have any questions or the concern that they brought up about parking or the issues of I just want to say that the village has been transparent. They have given us the logs of the complaints called in. We have seen pictures and we have seen letters. So does any of the planning boards have any questions that need to be addressed?
I can't see anything else.
Marcus, can you mute Mr. Timko?
Okay, hold on.
It's a 2-bedroom. In your file, it says she can't do it with a 2-bedroom, and it was a 2-bedroom. You
Yeah,
can't make
yeah,
it into an
it's her
office.
floor plan. It was
So now you're
submitted
making
as
it
a
into an office,
2-bedroom.
and you're
Says
changing
upstairs.
sizes of closets. It's outrageous. It's outrageous. And we're not the only ones that complained about it. And it's not just her that did it. It was people before her that did it too. And it's
Yeah,
just
she's not the first.
unconscionable.
We've been in
that
this
way-
house
that
for
way we're
30
being
years
treated.
and it's been
5
going on.
minutes.
Mr. and Mrs. Timko, you had enough time to speak what you had to say.
Hopefully you realize what
Right
kind of
now,
frustration.
right now, it's open for the planning board members to ask questions.
Okay,
So Marcus, can you mute them, please? Thank you. Does any of the planning boards have any questions as far as the accessory apartment?
Is there any problem with that single file driveway? Is an issue? Peter?
Pete, you're muted.
The village code states the driveway has to be 10 foot wide by 20, and she could fit 3 cars back in the line in the driveway. So there's the ability to park 3 vehicles in the driveway, and with the accessory apartment, 2 cars in front of the house in the village code.
Okay, thank you.
And the permit request is for the top apartment. Am I to understand no one's going to occupy the basement? It's not going to be an apartment?
Correct. That is correct.
And the apartment up top will be occupied by a relative, which is a cousin. If that changes, then this would have to come back for appeal, correct?
No.
Or review. If it's not a family, it's not valid, correct? It has to be a relative?
No,
No.
it does not have to be a relative, no. But currently, she's been there for 6 years and she is a relative now. I think the intent of the code is that they do allow to have rented out to non-relatives and to meet the needs of the family to meet expenses and be able to sustain and stay in the house. But I don't think there's any intention to change what's going on right now.
But she's not currently collecting rent. So
No, that's correct.
it's not a financial need. She's doing it for the help of her family.
No, yeah, as part of, she submitted a letter from her cousin who's doing this, and what the cousin indicated in the letter is she said, I contribute with the utility expenses and assisting my aunt Magnolia, who's 80 years old, for her basic needs, grocery shopping, physical therapy, home cleaning, that kind of thing. So she does contribute toward the expenses of the house. And given the assault upon my client, I just actually called to the attention of the board that we submitted 2 letters from neighbors, both of them Greg Segnet at 201 Tate Avenue, which is right around the corner, and also Maximilian or Max Fuchek at 203 Tate Avenue, again in the very close immediate proximity. Both of these individuals stated that they were supportive of the application of Ms. Infante. They both said that she was a very nice and kind neighbor and has caused no problems at all within their community. They both indicated that. There's also 2 separate letters, one from County Legislator Colin Smith, as well as County Legislator Jose Alvarado, and both of them vouched for the character of my client. So just basically in response to the attack from the people across the street.
Well, I just want to say, with due respect, that the Timcos also presented letters from other neighbors that are not happy with the circumstance. And I did read a letter where Miss Infante was informed that she needed to vacate the residents that were living in the illegal accessory. So I can't tell you that I'm not concerned. I am, because if steps were taken in the past to occupy the apartment and she had to be told to get rid of the residences there, then there has to be validity to what the Timcos are saying. And that's my concern, because what's going to happen if she's given a permit and she decides to rent out the basement? I mean, what can she say about it? Does she want to speak to the board?
Ms. Infante, do you want to, well, before we get to that, can I just point one thing out?
Sure.
I also spoke with a number of the neighbors, and basically I had several people tell me, I'm sorry, I'm supportive, I'd like to get involved, but I don't want to be attacked by these people from across the street. Okay, so I think there's unfortunately, and from what I've heard, this has been going on, this complaining and this constant haranguing for 35 years, long before my client ever got involved. So I think really you have to take that into consideration.
And trust me, I do, but I'm putting my shoes in both circumstances. I'm looking at it as Miss Infante, who wants her cousin there so that her mom can receive the support. And I'm looking at it on the side of the Timcos who have to live under these circumstances. If I had a neighbor that was renting out and there was a noise level the way they're explaining it, and there was rarely parking on the street, I wouldn't like it either. So I don't think the Timcos meant to attack. I just think they're emotional. I think they're very emotional about how they feel. And I respect both sides. Trust me, I'm trying to be very fair-minded.
No, I understand. And I think actually to address the concern that you have that on a going forward basis, Ms. Infante is going to be required to comply with the code provisions. The apartment is subject to inspection by the building inspector. And maybe I would ask Mr. Cook to speak to that issue as to, to basically require compliance going forward.
And this is another concern. Wasn't there a time where Ms. Infante was not allowing the inspector to come in and inspect the house?
No.
She allowed the top floor, but not the basement to be inspected?
No. Mr. Cook?
When I first gained access to the residence, the previous inspector had been in there. He did not document correctly what was present in the basement at that time. I went in, I saw everything. I did the first inspection, I did not have access. The second inspection I did.
Why didn't you have access to first?
Basically, there were things that were down there that had to be moved and they were in the way. And that was addressed when I came back the second time. There's no kitchen, there's no cooking, there's nothing down there, 2 rooms and a bathroom. It's not in New York State's requirements, an apartment. There's no ability to cook. There's no kitchen. No.
So how do we know someone wasn't occupying the basement? We don't, right? Because you weren't allowed in at a certain time. I mean, unless Ms. Infante wants to respond to that. Does she want to respond? Does she have anything to say?
I'm sorry, you ready? Sure. Ms. Infante?
Yes. Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Basically, when he said at the beginning, I need to inspect the second floor. So I said, oh, fine with me. So why he's going to be inspecting the first floor or the lower floor when he never asked me for that since the beginning? So I say,
but if there was nothing to hide, what was the big deal?
No, because I don't have to be showing the house to everybody. You know, so many inspectors is coming and knocking at the door. And I made a mistake at the beginning, 21 years ago when I bought the house. But when I bought the house, I bought it for Mr. and Mrs. Drago. And at the beginning, they say, the second floor is fine to be rental. So as a single person, I say, fantastic, because I need an extra income. So as soon as I rented, I placed the ad in the penny saver because I didn't know anything. I didn't know the law. That was my first house in the United States. And then when they came, inspected, immediately, I moved everybody. I did everything that the village asked me to do. So
and
I'm following.
Then no one's lived in your basement? I'm not speaking about a guest. I'm speaking about a tenant.
Tenant never. Guest, yes, because I have a lot of family that they come from different part of the world. And they stay maybe a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, but I'm entitled to do that.
You have that right, sure.
Yeah. Exactly. And the same that Mrs. Tinker said that every weekend I have people in my house. I'm a happy person. I love people. And they come, yes, I have visitors almost every weekend, possibly every weekend. But that's my house.
Right, because it's your home.
Exactly.
But when the visitors come, do they comply with the noise level of the town?
Noise level that's not true, because I'm a very peaceful person and everything happens in the house and never 5, 6 cars like he's stating. My driveway fits 4 cars, 1 in the garage and 3 in the driveway. So I'm entitled to have the 4 cars if I want to.
Absolutely. Is there public parking in front of your home?
No.
There's no public parking on that block?
It's street parking, but we never use it. Unless if we have barbecues on the weekends.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Do any other board members have any questions? So, Mr. Cook, the permit comes from your office, correct?
Yes.
So if there's a violation, are you able to retract that accessory apartment permit?
It's my understanding that this office would be the AHJ in this situation. And if there were to be a violation of renting downstairs or doing anything else that goes outside the parameters of what the single family residence is allowed to have, then the building department would retract take the permit back, take the special use permit back. It was explained in detail with Mr. McCarthy and Yolanda, that fact, and they agreed to that.
I have a question. What prevents them from opening up that unoccupied space up in that apartment to turn it back to the larger square footage?
Tracy and Mr. Manager can explain the angle of the roofs of that area. It's occupiable space is what's capable of being used. The outside perimeters of that whole top floor are knee walls and sections that they're 3 feet high. You cannot access those.
Right,
So
that I understand. I'm questioning
Yes.
where they
The
closed
bathroom.
off the spaces
Yeah.
by the bathroom.
There's one small area by the bathroom as part of the kitchen. And we were obviously based on the village code with the 600 square feet. We were 611 square feet. So in order to comply 100%, I know the board would be able to give a small allowance over the 600. I discussed with Mr. Mandra to come up with an alternative to get us under the 600 because that's what the code states. The 749 that was found in the file was the outside perimeter of the complete top floor. That is not all usable space, and you saw by the drawing, Mr. Mandra showed the gray area. I just felt that the 600 square feet, we were over by 11 square feet. If we eliminate that one area, that gets us to under 500 or under 600, and then we comply without any problems. I go back to the board to ask for a allowance.
I'm sorry, Peter, that's not the question. The question is the architect's answer is that space can become usable space again, the area that he took off. That's the question for the architect.
I'm sorry, I
Yeah,
misunderstood.
I can answer the question. So essentially those spaces are going to be framed with 2x4 and sheetrocked and completely sealed off. So could somebody break down the wall and open it? Sure, you could break down any wall in a house if you really wanted to, but essentially it will be sealed off with framing, sheetrock, tape, and paint, as if it's, you know, part of the existing occupiable space. Does that answer your question?
I'd also point out that the area we're talking about is just a small little alcove, and it's going to be subject to inspection, and the permit is renewable, and upon renewal has to be re-inspected. So I think that hopefully that would address your concerns.
Chairman, Chairman, the rest of the board, there's Mr. Timko is muted, but there's a number of statements he's put in the chat. So I don't know if you want him to speak again or read the chat, whatever you want to do. I just want to make sure you pay attention to that area as well. Or any board member can look at the chat.
I've been reading them.
You can have him speak again.
Mhm.
Okay, now, everything here, as far as going around talking to people that there was no problem, I don't know of anybody that's happy with the situation that's going on in the street. Okay, Mike
Mr.
Macaluso.
One at a
Hold on,
time.
Mr. Timko, please. One
Okay.
person has to speak at a time and only
Okay.
address the concerns to the code. We're not gonna listen to you all night about complaints or whatever.
Okay, well,
What question do you have as far as the code being?
Yes, your code says you have to take into consideration the appearance of single-family dwellings in the immediate area. We have on 207 and 203 Tate, there's multifamilies. Hers is a multifamily. You within one property, they're all side by side or multifamily. As far as the parking, there is no parking in front of that house. The only thing in front of that house is the street, which causes me issues every time I'm getting in and out of my driveway. I have a large vehicle, and I can only go in and out of my driveway one way because I can't get past her renters' cars. Okay, now I have numerous pictures of the renter downstairs leaving, getting mail out of the mailbox. And I sent that I said that. So I don't understand what the questions is of him not living in the basement where everyone knows he did. Everyone in the area,
Mr.
the
Timko,
neighbors.
that has
Yes.
nothing to do with the code. We're talking about
But
code.
the code says that you can't have a two-bedroom. Did you?
Timko
take that?
acknowledging that he illegally went into the federal mailbox? Come on.
He got mail every single,
That
sir,
accusation-
he got mail every single day. I can
Really
I can
upset
send you
me.
100 pictures since 2019, when Teresa Knickerbocker herself told us to get evidence, because that's how far back we've been complaining about the guy. I have a police record where he says he lived there, where I called at 5:45 in the morning because he would run his car for half an hour in the
Yes,
morning.
we
with a
saw that
constant
video,
muffler.
yes.
And
We
you,
saw the video, yes.
and also I called the police, and there's a police report that says that he says he lived there. So you guys are now letting a person who has been illegally renting, not only for the people that are there now, and the guy who you gave him an extra month. Then you just had another extra month with this COVID thing. So she's always getting these extensions to get things fixed. And he
Mrs.
yells
Timko,
out.
that, what you're talking
But
about
wait, I'm
now
gonna
has
say one last
nothing to
thing.
do
Are
with
you
the
going
code.
to deny, are you going to keep it open, at least for us, that if she has somebody else comes back in, that you're gonna go in there and you're gonna investigate? Because I've
Mrs.
had people
Timko,
trying to investigate and you never
The
did.
accessory apartment gets inspected every year.
We're not talking about that.
If
We're
there is
talking
a,
about
hold on,
somebody
let
going into the
Stopped
basement.
you
let me
from going in
finish,
the-
please.
She got an
If
attorney.
If there is a complaint, you continue your complaint to the village, and then the
I
building
did.
inspector, you're not letting me
Building
finish.
inspector, your building inspector did nothing when
All right,
it went.
Marcus, can you mute them
Wait,
again,
I just
please?
want to say something about the attorney.
No, you're done. All right, so basically the apartment will be inspected, if approved, every year. And then if there is a village complaint, the people can still complain to the village inspector, and then they will go out and inspect it. And then if there is an issue with the permit that is violated, then they can pull that permit away from that apartment. Is that correct, Stephanie? Am I saying that correct?
You are saying that correctly, and there's a provision in the code that says the building inspector shall have the right to inspect the premises upon reasonable notice to the owner. I think Mr. McCarthy is aware of that. I think the applicant is aware of that. And everybody should be aware of that. So if there's a complaint of some sort, I mean, it has to be a reasonable complaint. The building inspector can't go in there once a week. I mean, but on reasonable notice with a reasonable complaint, he has the right to inspect. He calls the applicant, he says, I need to inspect. They agree on a time, he can inspect.
Thank you.
She can't deny him access, is that correct?
That's correct.
Chairman, there's another hand, there's another hand raised. You want, Mike, you want me to let him speak?
Sure, thank you. Mike, you're muted.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can, sir.
Listen, I've been dealing with this for years too, just like the Timkos. This is ridiculous what's been going on this street. I got a guy renting his accessory apartment out that has 5 vehicles for his renters. The driveways only fits 2. What they do in the winter is other neighbors let them park in their driveway, maybe for a fee. I don't know. It doesn't help us out. The guy on the side of me has 7 vehicles. His driveway only holds 4. He's parking in the grass. And then he has another, and one of his vehicles from a tenant is parking in a guy's street on his driveway on Tate. Why these neighbors allow that? I don't know. It doesn't help us. This street is horrible. We have too many rentals on the street. We got a daycare up the street. That bottlenecks it. When these cars park on the road during the summer, they're by the stop sign. On each side, it makes it very difficult to pull in and out. My wife has a hard time backing out because of these cars being on this street. Their driveways it's not the right size driveways for these rentals. We do not need any more rentals. This is going to be a problem across the street, and it has been. And it's like, no one seems to listen to us.
Hey, Mike, I have a question for you. Have you gone to the zoning board on these concerns?
No, I haven't. Like we said, we've been talking to the mayor. We talked to the mayor. We had to sit down at the town one night, but nothing was done. And this is why we get aggravated. And I understand the Timco's aggravation, because I do, because it doesn't make any sense. We do not need another rental building, house, whatever, apartment on the street. It's too much now. It is
So Mike,
too much.
so your basic point of complaint is parking issues, correct?
Yes, it's horrible. And that's
Okay.
only going to deal with. And since
So-
that guy moved out, wait a second, please, Jeffrey.
So
Since
now
that
that
guy
you-
moved out
now-
of
now
that
that
basement,
you-
there was a
Mike-
man living there. It's better that way. It's better over there now.
Mike,
Yes, sir.
Can I ask you a question? So you're bringing up a parking issue. What other issues do you have with the code that the zoning had passed for this efficiency apartment application?
I don't think it should be allowed. We have too many rentals on the street. That's my issue. And this whole time, it's been getting rented out and nothing was ever done. It wasn't legal. It wasn't done. Now, all of a sudden, you're going to allow it? And we're telling you we got problems with too many cars on the street because of the rentals. It's not adequate enough for the driveways. The driveways are not adequate enough to hold the vehicles. So I hear what you're saying, but I don't think you hear what I'm saying or what Scott and the Timcos are saying and Judy are saying. And, you know, and this lawyer mentioned that you talk to people on the street. Well, I talked to a couple too, other than the Timcos and Judy, and they're not happy with it. And Max, he mentioned Max. Max is the one that has the renters downstairs with 5 vehicles in a driveway that only allows 2. So all summer long, they're out on the street, the same as the guy next to me. So that's all. You know, how many rentals are you going to allow on a 1-block area? This is very, very frustrating. When I first moved here, the lady that owned it, where Max lives, it rented out, very quiet. The guy next door, very quiet. All of a sudden, boom, it just changed. Now we got all these cars everywhere. And it does make a difference. It does change the quality of life for you. I'm not happy. I'm ticked off. I see it. And now this guy has been living in the basement. I don't care what the lawyer, anyone can say anything. We seen it. You're not gaslighting me. I seen it. Pictures, I had videos for a while. I don't know if I still have them. And he does go in the mailbox. He was going in the mailbox every day. I'd see it. So it's just frustrating. And I think other than you're talking about the square footage, other things got to be, you know, you got to think about other things about this. And I don't think this is the only area this is going on in this town either. I just don't.
No,
I don't.
because
Talk to people and everybody's aggravated. It's getting overcrowded in this town, and you're going to allow it. It sounds like you're going to allow this.
so
That's
Mike, your major issue is right now about the parking, correct?
Yes. Plus,
Okay,
I don't.
so-
she's-
so
plus,
have
there
you-
was-
have you-
plus-
have
plus,
you
hang on,
gone-
There was a guy living in that basement, and that aggravates me to hear. Oh, no one was living there. He was living there for years. Stop it, please.
Mike,
Go
I
ahead.
understand
I'm
what-
sorry.
Mike, I understand what you're talking about in the past, but we're talking about the present right now. So
It's still going
basically,
on.
but your issue right now is basically the biggest thing is about parking on the street and
Too many
congestion.
vehicles. There's too many vehicles in these apartments that are
And
right
have-
around our house.
Have you or any of the other neighbors gone to the zoning board to try to change any of this stuff?
No, we've been dealing with Knickerbocker, the mayor.
Okay.
And we had to sit down with the buildings, we had to sit down with the building inspector, the town lawyer, and the police chief, the prior police chief, and nothing was done.
Okay. Does any of the planning boards have any question for Mike? As far as any of his complaints?
I think he's been clear.
Okay.
Well,
Thank
I have a question.
Yes,
Is there
ma'am.
anything that we can do, the village, in regards to the parking or the issues of too many cars, or the complaint?
Is that question for me, ma'am?
No,
Mike,
that's for, actually, that question is for the lawyer, Peter, anybody that, is with the village.
So Eileen, I'm not sure what you really mean. Are you talking about changing this part of the code that says you have to have 2 off-street parking, or?
No,
And any
no, no,
change
no.
to the code would become from the village board, if that's what you mean. I'm not clear.
No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about if if there are that many cars on Second Street. I went up Second Street one day. There was nobody on the street. Now,
You're not gonna
it
see it
was
in the
late.
winter. You're not gonna see it in the winter time, ma'am. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. You're not gonna see it in the winter time. It's in the summertime, and it does happen. It does happen. I had to call the cops one time because one of the cars was parked into my driveway, and my wife, I didn't want my wife to hit it backing out. It was during the winter, and they had to move it. And there's been times I've been in my garage, because I sit there, I listen to my music, I do carving and stuff, and I see these cars pull up, and their back end is right on my driveway. And I ask them to move it. Most times they do. Because if my
Okay,
wife
Mike.
backs out, it's very difficult when you're backing out and you got a car right there, and then right behind you on the other side of the street, there's a car. And the way people turn up to go up this road, it's a bottleneck and it's dangerous. But go ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay, Mike,
Mr.
thank you.
Macaluso?
Marcus, can you mute Mike?
You can mute me.
Thank you, Mike.
No, I'm not disputing Mr. Marcaluso's complaint. I'm just saying that I just happened to go up that street and it was during the day and it was, I mean, it's within winter and there were no cars parked anywhere on the street whatsoever. So but I'm not disputing what his complaint is, whether it's in the summer, fall or spring, when it's when the parking is permitted. I just wondered if there was any, are there too many cars allowed for the number of applicants or for the accessory apartments on Second Street? That's my question. And that kind of goes into what Mr. Marcaluso said, that there's a lot of cars there. So I'm just curious as to if they're adhering to the code of the number of vehicles that are allowed. That's all.
So Peter, would that be under your jurisdiction? If somebody were to call to say, look, they're supposed to have only 2 cars off-street parking and there's 12 cars? Is that the police? Who does that?
Parking, I don't believe that was a building inspector, a building department requirement. Isn't that outside village code for?
No, I
police
meant
involvement?
in particular for accessory apartments that are supposed to be limited to their parking. I think that's the question here.
Yeah,
that people
that's
are
my
being
question.
accused of having, yeah, like 5 cars, like for.
Are
one
they,
car.
if they're allowed 4 cars and the 5th car is there as a vehicle that is parked all the time, what I'm asking is, with each accessory apartment on Second Street, are the number of vehicles that are parked allowed? Is there an excess of parking there
Okay,
for those accessory apartments?
if I may, I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, I hear you, Brian.
Okay, the code says that you have to have 2 as a minimum requirement. It does not say that you can only have 2 as a requirement for an accessory apartment. An
Okay.
accessory, if it has 2, it could have 3, it could have 4.
Right.
It's in the code, it's a minimum of 2, not a maximum.
Okay, is that parking, 2 cars parking in the driveway or?
Cars parking in the driveway in a legal place. And also, despite Mr. Timko, the code does say for an accessory apartment that it is permitted to have 2 parking spaces in front of the house on the street.
Okay.
It does say that. He's saying that there's no parking. That's not a valid point. The code does not call that out.
Okay, thank you.
And
Sure.
I would follow up on that. Obviously, my client has plenty of, not more than adequate and certainly at least enough room for 2 or more vehicles off street in her driveway. And that's generally the condition that's been taking place. Am I correct, Yolanda?
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
So in the
Okay, so-
past,
I'm sorry.
in the past, we have seen photos of people parking in front of the hedges or along the grass. So you're saying that they're gonna use the driveway more and not use the street parking?
I never use Mr. Tinkov's side of the street parking.
No, I'm talking about parking in front of your house on the street.
Unless if I have visitors, yeah, they do. On my side, yes.
which is permitted.
Yes.
Except in the winter time, correct, Brian?
At winter time,
Oh,
we never do.
Okay.
Is there any other questions from the board members? Marcus, is there anyone other than Mr. Timko or Mr. McCallus that's needed to speak?
Judy, hold on a second. Okay, Judy, you can speak. Judy, you have to unmute yourself on the bottom left-hand part of the screen. You can unmute. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, Judy, we hear you. Good
Okay,
evening.
good evening. I've lived here all my life in the village of Buchanan. It used to be a quiet area. It's not anymore. As for the house across the street, I lived there. I've been here since that house was built. It was a one-family house. In 2001, they were told after Yolanda got into the house to move the house to move the people that were there, that it was a one-family house, which the village has a copy of. The village has a copy of a lot of things that hasn't been brought out, including the letter that I wrote that I wanted everybody to read, that I wanted everybody to listen to that might be hearing from the public hearing. The cars on this road are atrocious. You have a schematic that the building inspector did where it says the apartment was $749 with 749 square feet with 2 bedrooms. All of a sudden it's changed, okay? As for the woman who lives upstairs, she goes to work every single day. I don't know what she does, but Miss Yolanda said that she had people in there paying rent. She said it herself beforehand. Yes, don't shake your head, Mr. McCarthy, because she did. She said,
Hey, Judy?
yes.
Can you just stay on track of what you're complaining about?
Okay,
as far
all right, okay.
Let me finish, please. As far as if it's parking or if it's garbage, but stay on track with that. But keep in mind that we are not the zoning board to change the zoning of the house.
Okay,
Thank you.
lot size. Every other multifamily house that around here is on 100 by 100-foot lot. The building inspector stated emphatically that you had to have a driveway that had to be, it couldn't be one in front of the other, it had to be side by side. Now he's stating everything that was different. I don't understand how all of a sudden all these codes have been changed when all we're trying to do is live comfortably on this street. If you lived across the street from this place and what we've been going through, especially the last 2.5 years, you'd move. And I'm not moving because this property's been in my house for my family for 120 years. We've had people living in that house. They said there was never a car outside. There was a gray car outside constantly with the people that's downstairs. Now you told me that doesn't matter, but damn it, come on. Show some spunk of what this village used to be and what it can be again, instead of just letting people just do what they want to do. The parking is atrocious. You can't, I was told by the fire department, my cousin is Bobby Outhouse, who runs a fire department. He said, quote unquote, you could not get a fire truck up this street with the cars that's parked there. That's a dangerment to me. There's been people in that house that I don't know about that I'm scared in my own house. I have a handicapped husband. I've had people that I had to call up to get the police department to move the people that they were in my my sidewalk so my husband couldn't get out of the car. This is some of the crap that we're going through on 2nd Street. Ms. Baez, I have to thank you for sticking up for us because you're the only one that did. Eileen Epsinger, you used to go after everybody. Nobody would do anything that you would let them get away with.
Hey, Judy?
Wait. You live so you don't see this. We see this every day. Mr. McCarthy, you said about the mailbox. I've had mail from across the street several times brought to my house where I've given it back to the mailman. This is atrocious what we're going through here in the village. We've done everything that Mayor Knickerbocker asked us to do. We've had in-person meetings, we've had Zoom meetings, we've gotten nowhere. She says, I'm gonna take care of it, I'm gonna take care of it. We also had a meeting with Marcus at one time. Marcus was involved in one of those meetings, along with the building inspectors before. So what do you people want us to do? All we want to do is live in a quality of life that we don't have to suffer all the time. I'm tired of suffering with what's going on. And to allow something to keep on going. The building inspector also stated that if you're asking for permission for an accessory apartment, you should not have people living in there now. That makes no sense. That's a defeative thing. She's lived there all along. She can say anybody is a cousin. She can say anything that she wants. We are across the street. We are the ones that's going through hell with what's going on across the street. And it's not stopping. If you allow this to happen, that's on your shoulders. But boy, you're going to have to pay for it in the long run, because this is wrong. This is wrong what the village is doing. And you have somebody that's living in that apartment now, and that's not supposed to be. You're asking people, you're asking permission to get an apartment. You're asking permission. And these people have lived there for years.
Hey,
Years.
Judy, the question I have for you is your big issue is parking, correct?
My big issue is the people and what you're doing across the street.
Okay, so you have an issue with people and parking. Have you been to the zoning board?
No, we've done what Teresa asked us to do. Teresa Knickerbocker asked us to get all this information and submit it to her. We submitted it.
But Judy, you understand that the zoning.
No, we
board-
don't understand. We are not legal here. We do not. No one said for us to go to the zoning board. No one. Everybody said, we'll take care of it. We'll take care of it. Well,
Okay,
you know
Judy.
what? Nobody did.
All right, does anyone on the planning board have a question for Judy?
I do. Ms. Sasso, why were you frightened by her guests? Did they attempt to approach
No.
you? Manner?
Well, what was happening for years is people were coming in at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning with suitcases and leaving early in the morning at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. We still have people going in the house with suitcases. And yet we have people with the suitcases that come in over a weekend. We don't know who these people are. The parking is atrocious, and I can't get out of my driveway. There's people behind me. She has parties. I don't know what the village wants us to do. The
Okay, thank
parking,
you.
the people.
I could
All
just.
right, Judy, that's enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I can.
Anyone
point out-
else have a question?
Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
What were you gonna say there, Mr. McCarthy, if it has something to do with the code? Because it's not worth going back and forth, Peter.
Yeah, I'll reserve comment. I was going to address all these accusations that have been going on, unfounded accusations.
So basically,
But I'm going to withdraw my comment. Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Marcus, can you mute Judy, please? So basically,
Done.
we know in the past there has been a parking issue. We're trying to get approval for legalizing the application permit. We know that there is every year that the village inspector has to inspect it for fire and safety so that it meets the standards. And then there is a process, if there is a complaint, that can go to the village building inspector or the police department for them to investigate anything. So does anybody else on the planning board have any question before I go to ask for a vote on the application?
Do we all agree that this could possibly help the situation at this particular location?
Well, I believe the code was brought into play to help the county and the state to come in compliance with the low income housing process to have more apartments, like efficiency or mixed use.
No,
building.
that's not what I mean, Jeff. What I'm saying is that bringing, bringing the applicant into compliance for an accessory, a legal accessory apartment. Does the board feel that that can help the parking situation, or do we feel that this is out of control? Not only on Second Street total, but also with visiting relatives and all the rest of it.
I'm torn. I think I'm torn. I see it that what the inspector did perhaps help the situation. But I just go back to the intent of what an accessory apartment is for, and I struggle with it. And I do think that it's excessive in our village. So it does concern me. So I hear the neighbors' concerns and I feel
Right.
for them. But I mean, I understand as a homeowner, the right that you have to do certain things. It does seem to be a little bit out of control in our village. And the parking is certainly an issue when you have, potentially four people parking in a 2 parking spot driveway every day, and on every house on the street,
Yeah.
And I want
Anybody
to
else?
add, I'm sorry, go ahead, Eileen.
No, I just want to hear, what anybody else thinks.
I
Wilbur.
just want to add that, and I agree with Jennifer, but my concern is she already has someone living there. She put the horse before the cart anyway. So what would us granting her a permit change? She's already occupying the apartment. So what's that going to change? It's not like she's asking for permission. She's letting us know someone's there. She just wants to make it legal.
It's called bringing things up to compliance.
I
Peter,
understand what that means. I understand.
that. But Peter, you've been going around doing inspection on other dwellings that have apartments. Is parking a big issue in the village totally? Or have you gotten complaints more about parking?
The 28 some odd accessory apartments that we've had, I have not received direct complaints about parking in those units that I've inspected. No one's
But
contacted.
that
the
doesn't
office.
mean that it's not happening on this block.
Good for
No,
you.
we understand that. We understand
Okay.
that. But the code is to bring more accessory apartments or lower income housing into the village of Buchanan to help the national standard. But the biggest thing is not only is the parking, are there illegal apartments out there that are taking up spaces that are in the street and causing congestion?
Well,
That's
this one
the
seems
other.
to be causing it, yeah.
And what are you saying that we're bringing this in to help the standard? I mean, I don't know. That's not the intent of this, that's not the intent of what we're doing.
No, but the
To
code,
help
that's
low
what the
income housing. I mean, it's not even claimed as low income housing.
But the code is to bring national standing for more people with single families to have accessory apartments to do what they want to have a legal accessory apartment.
That's what the state wants to do, but that's still on the table for discussion because most homeowners
Don't want that.
don't want that.
Correct.
Can I,
They
can I,
want that.
So
right.
that's why the applicant is here asking for that application right now.
Can I point something out? And I think obviously there's been a lot of heated arguments made. And I think my client is her intention, if you look at the letters from the people that are supportive of her, she's not some kind of bad person. She's not done anything. There's been a lot of wild accusations going around. But if I may, if we look at the property itself, she meets every one of the criteria that is set forth in the village code. And I think the purpose that she's moved forward is,
I'm trying, I can't get on.
can you please mute her? Thank you. So my point is, she meets every one of the criteria that are within your own village code. I understand that there's been a long history, going way back, even well before she ever came here, of complaints from some of these neighbors. She's doing everything she can to legalize the conditions that are there. Once she does that, she's under the auspices of the building department, and the code inspector, the building inspector, and she's subject to being brought into court and violated if she doesn't comply. So I think that's kind of the way I would ask that you look at it. So, and one other thing too, they're talking about, oh, there's been people in the basement, or they're renters. Well, how about, just as a scenario, let's say, for example, that my client had a boyfriend that she was dating for the last few years, and he was living with her, right? That's not a renter, and nobody was making any, I'm just saying, for example, okay? And a person was living there. That's not, these people are making all these wild accusations. One woman claiming she feels unsafe. Well, you know what? If you feel unsafe, you should be required to go to the police and make a specific complaint, other than making vague aspersions before this board. So I really think it's been grossly unfair of that type of complaint. And so I think in looking at this, the board, if you look at the application, you look at the property, it's been inspected by the building inspector. It meets all the requirements. She's addressed all the code issues that we were talking about, and health and safety issues. That's all I would add. And we thank you for your consideration.
That's what I was trying, that was what I was trying to say. She's now come into compliance after having possibly 20 years of non-compliance, bringing her into compliance where she's got to hold a certain standard, so that if there is a complaint, then it's backed up by what Dan McCarthy has agreed with the client and with our building inspector or the police. So that's what I was looking at, was that, if she's met the compliance now, where she has to meet certain standards that we have recourse for.
Yeah, that's all.
To me, makes it better, which to me makes it a better situation than not.
I would agree.
Yeah, and that's all apartments in the village have to meet them standards.
Right, yeah.
So does any of the board member have any questions?
One last one. If her cousin stays in that accessory apartment, is it still illegal since it's a family member?
Ask that question again, Awilda. Say that
Okay,
again.
so she's had her cousin living there for 6 years.
You're right.
If she doesn't have, does she need a permit? Let me phrase it this way. Does she need a permit for a family member to occupy that space?
I would say no. It's a
I
family
would
member.
think no too. But
Okay,
Are you
so if her
asking
cousin's the one that's living there, why would she need a permit?
And if the permit isn't granted, does the family members have to leave?
No.
If the permit isn't granted, nothing's going to change, correct?
No. And she's got the cousin living there to help out.
And she's not getting paid, right? There's no lease, there's nothing
There's no
documented.
rent being paid. She's only paying for utilities to help out.
Mhm.
Correct.
Okay. I'm ready.
Jeff, it's Sharon.
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay, I just wanted to let you know, we didn't do it last month because of illness. The applicant met her requirements for the notification of 250 feet of all our neighbors. And the village does have the cards back in the office.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Is there any other questions from the board members?
Can I just
Yeah.
address one point that Ms. Baez had brought up? Ms. Baez, the property meets all the requirements for an accessory apartment. If at some point down the road, let's say, for example, that my client's mother becomes ill and needs more care and attention, and she has to actually rent out the apartment to try to the accessory apartment to try to make ends meet. And that is something that we, she meets all the requirements. Her conditions, she doesn't need that right now, but I think that if that were to change, and the point is she meets the requirements to qualify for an accessory apartment.
I understand. I'm also trying to be considerate of the neighbors that are being affected by the fact that she has other people either living there or visiting her. I'm just looking at what everyone is saying. I'm trying to be fair and balance everything out. Like Jennifer said, this is not easy.
Can I just say one thing? I'm not sure how denying this helps the neighbors who are complaining. I mean, we're not saying that she can't have her cousin there, she can't have guests and visitors. And so I'm not sure how denying this solves anything. And I think, like what Eileen was saying, that you have more control over somebody who has, who our village has the right to come in and inspect when called, versus saying, oh, she's doing it anyway, let these people stay. I mean, I don't know how that resolves anything for the neighbors who are concerned, for the village having any access to the house. That's just my thoughts. And reading the code, I think the reason to have an accessory apartment permitted by this board is to make sure that the provisions of the code and the legislative intent of allowing these kind of apartments, cousins or not, gives some parameters and gives the village the right to enforce them. So just my thoughts.
Is there a maximum amount of people that can live in an accessory apartment?
2.
Even at 2 people, that's it?
Hello, can I get in? Hello?
What's going on, Judy?
All right, I have a couple things. And it's in relationship to what was said by Mr. McCarthy.
All right, Judy,
about-
does it have to do with the
No,
code?
wait. Yes.
No, I'm asking
it
the
does.
question because we're just talking right now about the code.
It does, because I want to know who we call when we have a problem. I want to
Right.
know, do we call the mayor like we've done? We've called Marcus, we've called the building inspector, we've called everybody with stuff which we were told to do. Who do we call to get a problem resolved?
Okay, Judy, if you were listening what I said before, if you have
You said the zoning board.
No, I didn't say that. I said, did you talk to the zoning board? But I said, if you had a complaint per the village code, that would go towards Mr. Cook or Brian or Peter. But if it's a police issue, then it would go to the police. But
Okay.
as far as the complaint issue, we're not here to discuss that. We're here to look at the village code for the accessory apartment and hear the public, what they have to say, and hear what the applicant have to say.
Well, it's been very difficult for me to get on here several times, and I had a lot to say. I hope other people were trying to get on and could get on. And according to what the other people on Second Street, I didn't hear them on here today.
Well,
And
we
once-
heard Mr. Timko, we heard
I
Mr.
understand.
Malabis, and we heard you, and we
Right.
saw letters for and against.
Right.
So, all right, so right now, if you have nothing to
Well,
say
well-
about the code changing, which would go to the zoning board,
Okay, all I have to say is one of the major things is parking. The parking on the street and the legality of having 4 multifamily houses, plus this one across the street, plus a daycare center going up with people going up and down the street all the time. There's no other village, there's no other street in the village that has what we have here on Second Street. And if you didn't live in a cul-de-sac, and if Eileen didn't live way back where she was, you would see what was going on in this street.
or I drive around the village all the time, Judy.
What?
So I'm around the village all the time.
I haven't seen you on Second Street.
Now I want to say something. Can I say one more thing here? As
Okay,
far as
Mr. Timko,
No, as far as the false-
only
as
to
far as the
address the
false
code.
accus- Yes, it does. Okay, the
Okay.
code is about having, she advertised for a 2-bedroom apartment upstairs. And if you look into Penny Saver from 2001, It was $1,200 a month, newly renovated upstairs apartment. In
So
the
it's
penny.
clear, they're talking 20 years ago, and she acknowledged.
Okay, and the person was, the people, the family was.
Mr.
kicked out.
Timko,
Them
Mr.
back in.
Timko, please, we're dealing with now, we're not dealing with the past, we're dealing with the
Okay.
code that the zoning board has passed and that
Yes.
we have to follow. Do you have
Okay.
it? We understand that there's a parking issue. We
No, it's not a
understand that
parking
there's.
It's an
Mr. Timko,
overcrowding issue. Yes.
There's a parking issue. Every one of you
Okay.
just said there's a
No,
parking issue.
let me say one thing. It goes farther than this. Okay, there was false accusations made by the attorney and also towards me, and also false police reports filed against us by Mrs. Yolanda. Okay, stating that we were harassing her, we were racially harassing her, which I take major offense to, because you can't say
Mr.
that because.
Timko,
No, I would say one more thing.
I'm not a court, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not the
Yes,
police department,
but
we're the
he is an
planning
attorney.
board.
He
We
is an
just
attorney.
want- we-
Now,
we-
I just want to say, no, I want to say one more thing. He said, the attorney said that was her boyfriend living there. She said in the police report he was a boyfriend. If it was her boyfriend, did he always have his
Mr.
blonde girlfriend?
Timko, we're not dealing with this.
not
This is
what I
the
said.
planning board. Marcus, can you mute them again,
She
please?
told the truth, we wouldn't have a problem. If she admitted it,
And also Mike and Judy?
you can't stop muting us. That's
Yes, I
not
can.
right. That's
Goodbye.
not right. That's,
All right, so
Can
there's a
she-
planning
can I-
board.
If she told the truth, we wouldn't be here.
Can I just read something from
listen, unless they see
the
her,
regulations?
unless
Yes,
they
go
see
ahead,
her
Jennifer.
So if I just read it, right? And I go to 211 Tech 22 Section A, the last section says, furthermore, it is the purpose and intent of this section to allow the more efficient use of the village's existing stock of dwellings to provide economic support for present resident families of limited income, to protect and preserve property values, and to maintain the single-family character of the resident district of the village of Buchanan without the overutilization of land. I understand what Stephanie was saying. I've listened. I just question when we grant these, are we saying that there's no other option for some place to live, that there's no other multifamily housing that could support this? Are we allowing people to own houses that they need to rent in order to afford? I do struggle with this. I just think of the intent and what happens is different. I just wanted to read that to you guys so you could see where it's not just that this particular lot passes the requirements of the minimum, what is required to have an accessory apartment, but is the intent of the accessory apartment in our village and what it's supposed to do. I just think we need to look at that as board members.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can I read the very preceding sentence? And if I could, just to flesh out this topic, and I do think it's an important issue. This code specifically states, it is the specific purpose and intent of this provision to provide the opportunity for the development of small rental dwelling units designed in particular to meet the special housing needs of single persons and couples of low and moderate income, both young and old, and of relatives of families presently living in the village of Buchanan. So I think when you read those two in conjunction, exactly what's taking place and what Ms. Infante is asking specifically meets the intent, as well as the dimensional requirements and the parking requirements and everything else. So I would just ask that you keep all those things in mind. Thank you.
It also states taking into consideration the amount of parking in the area and traffic. Read farther into it. It says the same thing under 6A. As far as you're talking about, it says right here, the number of accessory apartments in the neighborhood in relation to single family dwellings, the amount of traffic, parking conditions in the neighborhood, the principal must appear to be a single famy residence. There's right there, it says your own code. Read farther into it.
It has one car.
Too much parking, too much traffic.
who's gonna help us if they should find out, okay, you don't help us before.
So if this is granted, she's gonna bring somebody else in.
You're gonna do
That's
Another person's gonna come in. That's what's gonna happen. They're gonna say, the cousin's living upstairs right now. They're gonna bring another person in right away, rent it out again like she's been doing for 21 years. Just, just throw more on our lap over here.
absolutely false. And conjecture on your part. And I think unfortunately motivated by a mindset that appears from the records going on over 35 years. So I'm sorry, but that's just a really unfortunate and kind of an outrageous.
It's not conjecture, it's the truth.
How many pictures do you want?
All right, if you-
Also, your own building inspector said you cannot have a single file driveway for an accessory apartment. And this was told me by Brian Cook.
No.
Okay, and Peter, yes, oh, you lie to me? Okay, listen, I don't lie. I don't lie.
How to
Okay?
drive.
You also told me you have to actually inspect and grant parking for the accessory apartments on the property or in front of the property. Now you're saying no. And both of you told me that there's not enough of parking. And Peter also told me that technically that she should have a fire escape on the back if there's somebody living upstairs. Okay, no, you're gonna lie about that. Okay, oh yeah, sure, no problem. He said if somebody's living upstairs and there's two ways out, which means she's gonna need a fire escape in the back of the house. Now all of a sudden that's gone.
Our real issue is that if she brings somebody back, you keep saying that it was 20 years ago. It was been going on for 20 years. If she brings somebody else back in the house, there is nobody that we can go to. We went to everybody. They told us unless they see her, Teresa told us, and building inspectors, the last name building inspector told us, Conti, told us that unless they see her doing physical work in the house,
They cannot go in.
they cannot go in. So we complained about this for 5 years since she's had that new guy. She had people before that guy. His name was, what was his name? We had his name written down. He before him, there was two young boys, I call them boys. I actually even gave one of them a reference because he wanted to be a police officer. He lived downstairs. She had a couple with a baby that were living upstairs before Monica moved in. That was 10 years ago. She's always had people, and she does it illegally. She lies. Right now it said to me, look, I had a guy living in the basement.
All
Now
right,
I'm going to
Mrs.
open it up.
Timko,
She also had
Mrs.
an
Timko,
attorney that
we
stopped
have
her
to
from going
stop
and
this
getting
going
the-
about the past. Basically,
It
what we're
wasn't
here,
the past, it's present.
It's not the past. She's
It's
living in an
present.
illegal
The girl's
apartment right
in there
now.
right now. You got the guy out on December 31st.
She's
You
living
gave her an
upstairs in the
extra,
apartment.
you gave her an extra
Can I-
30
can I
days.
ask-
Get
the
the guy out.
purpose, Mr. and Mrs. Timko, the purpose of this meeting tonight was to hear your complaints, which we all did. We did hear your voice messages to the village. We saw pictures, we saw letters. We understand what your issue is. You had your chance of speaking.
But our issue is
You're
that
not-
the
you're
woman
not-
has somebody
You're
upstairs.
not letting me
and
finish, please.
You changed that.
Right now, it's up to
You're
the
letting me
board
finish.
members to decide if they want to approve the application.
If
You
this
changed the
goes
size
through,
of an apartment upstairs. to let
If
her-
you guys have an issue with the zoning laws, you need to take it to the zoning board to change your street issue.
zoning's not an accessory apartment.
I don't know what you mean by zoning.
We're not talking
Everything's in
about-
these, we're talking about, we have the codes right in front of us. It says that you're supposed to
Chairman,
take into.
The codes that you're addressing
lied about-
are a board from
The
the
codes say
zoning.
that you're supposed, you can't have a 2-bedroom upstairs. Is it still 2 rooms? Or did you just make the closet, you just have a smaller 2-bedroom upstairs? It says right in your own codes, an accessory cannot be a 2-bedroom. So then you changed it and you called it an office. She was renting it out as a
Chairman,
2-bedroom.
can I ask you to ask?
You know this, it
Mr.
says,
Cohen
it's right
to
in, it's
respond
right
to
in
these
your paper.
accusations from these people? Can I ask you, they made certain statements that claiming what we're told by Mr. Brian and Peter Cook. Can I ask permission to have them address that?
Is there accusations they have a skeleton looking at our house right now? There's a skeleton in the upstairs window looking at our house right now. You want to come up, drive by, look at the skeleton. You think that's right? You think I want to look out at my house and see a skeleton with a hat looking at my house right now? Come drive right by now. There's a skeleton looking out the window at our houses, harassing us. We're not harassing anybody.
Harasses us. She came banging on my door because
You're shaking your
another
head.
neighbor
Ms.
called-
McCarthy, you're shaking your head, but why don't you look and go past and look upstairs? Look at the upstairs window and
Is
you
that
look
a
at a
death
human
threat?
skeleton.
All right,
looking at
Mr.
us.
Timko, there's no
You
other badgering back and forth. Thank you. Okay, so right now, the board members will have to decide to allow the accessory permit application. So we'll go person by person, it's either yay
Hold
or
on, hold
nay.
on. Hey, Jeff,
Yes,
if you want to take a vote, if they're ready tonight and you don't want to hold this over, you should close the public hearing first and then you'll poll your board
right.
and take the vote after.
Does any of the board member have any further questions, or do they need more time to decide about this? To go to a vote? Elaine, you're
Can I say
muted.
something? Can I
No.
say something, Jeffrey, Mike Macaluso? I want to ask something.
Is he going to speak?
No,
Sure.
go ahead, Elaine, you were speaking.
You want me to speak?
No, I want Elaine to finish what she was saying.
No, I wanted to know what Dan wanted, what information he wanted from Brian and Peter.
Well, they were making claims that, saying that Brian and Peter made certain statements, and then I think they both shook their head no. And then he was accusing them of being liars. So I'd like to hear their comments about it
Yeah.
with the subject matter.
What particular point would you like to speak about first?
I'm not sure at this point. It's been.
All right, one of them had
Funny.
to do with the driveway.
Right.
Sure.
Where he said, you said it wasn't, single driveway wasn't allowed. Peter, you were accused of saying that they needed a fire escape. So I
Yes.
believe those are the 2 points, Dan?
Yes, yes, correct. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, I can address the first one. I've had lengthy conversations with Mr. Timko, and at no time did the width of the driveway, other than the standard Buchanan requirements.
Peter said it to me. Peter said
Mr.
it.
Timko, please do not interrupt when he's speaking.
Okay, well, Peter's the one that he claims had said it to him. Peter, would you care to respond to that, please?
I have never spoken to Mr. Timko about any driveway requirements,
You
ever,
talked to me for an
or a
hour
fire
and a half on the
escape,
phone one time.
ever,
Talked to me for an hour and a
Ever.
half.
ever.
Okay. Now,
You
it's-
may be confusing me with Anthony Conti, but I did not talk to you about a fire escape or parking at
Yes,
any
you
time.
did. You're lying. You're
I did-
lying. Yes, you did.
I'm lying.
You also
You're a
told us-
liar.
You also,
Yeah.
Hmm? Well, I'm sorry, you were incorrect.
car was loud. You said you went around the car and it wasn't loud. So now you knew the guy was living there. And there's nothing we can do about it if she brings somebody else in. And just the fact that she's done it for 20 years and it's caused us problems, not just us, several neighbors, and now she's going to get a pat on the back, and you change the size of it by changing closets for somebody that does things illegally. Illegally is so outrageous to me. Is this what we become? Is this what this village does? You ought to be ashamed of yourselves. I'm a taxpayer. I don't bother anybody. My dog barks for a second on the porch. I immediately bring my little dog in. I don't want him to bother her. I did everything. When I've asked her that we were having problems with this, she said to me, nobody's bothering you. So it's crazy. It's not right.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Timko. Does anyone else have any questions?
Yes,
for-
can you hear me? This is Mike
Yes, go ahead,
Macaluso.
Mike.
All right, so,
Per the code, what do you have issue with the code?
yeah, so
Not a
I
complaint?
got a question. So this apartment that she's trying to get, it's for two person. Is that correct?
Per the code, yes.
It's a 2-person that 2 people can live there. So that's 2 cars on the street then. Instead of 1, and that guy had just left, so we have no cars. So then we could possibly get 2 cars back on the street. And I know it's a zoning issue. You're telling me it's a zoning issue. So let's say I go to the zoning department. They say you have too many vehicles at your house. You can't park it on the street. Are they going to chase those renters out?
Technically, if the zoning changes the requirement of the apartment, that would be one thing, but each apartment is authorized certain number of cars. If there's too many cars in a dwelling, then you have a right to go to the village to complain. And then they
Okay,
have to
so-
follow up.
Okay, so with all the rentals we got in the daycare, we're gonna have more vehicles on the street. Okay. All right, thank you.
So we're supposed to go to the police department now with all the cars, correct? That's what you just said?
If you have a parking issue and they're blocking your driveway, you can
It's
call. the
not a
police
parking
department.
issue. I'm talking about 7 and 8 cars for one house. We can call up on, my life is on the line. You're going up Second Street with the cars. You said to call the police, right?
You could complain.
Okay,
to the
but
village.
the police department says we're supposed to talk to the building inspectors.
Again, I said
Building-
you can call the building inspector to complain. And then if someone is blocking your driveway, which you all claim that this happened, that you can call the police.
What about my sidewalk?
What about your sidewalk?
Well, if my sidewalk is blocked, can I call the police? If I can't get out of my sidewalk? I have a handicapped husband. It used to be, I used to be able to if you.
I don't understand your question. A sidewalk
If
is a
someone,
sidewalk.
I understand a sidewalk is a sidewalk. I'm not a jackass. But let me tell you something. If someone blocks my my sidewalk and my husband can't get out, can I call the police? We used to be able to.
That is. a
It's always
sidewalk is-
been
a
in the
sidewalk
village.
is for public.
Not in my house, not in my yard. If I can't get out of my sidewalk
Sidewalk from the front door to the street.
and I can't get out, what am I supposed to do? And there's been people doing that several times.
Front door to the
Who
street.
do I call? Do I call the building inspector who says no, call the police? And the police says call the building inspector. We're in a catch-22 situation here on Second Street. And nothing's gonna happen until something happens here with one of these houses where a fire truck can't make that turn to get up this street. And then the village is really gonna be in trouble.
Or an ambulance. And another thing too is the upstairs apartment is still a 2-bedroom
And your code
apartment.
says it
They just
can't be two.
renamed it to an office.
And code says it can't be a 2-bedroom, so she can bring somebody. You have to understand too, that these people also have
I
guests.
don't know where you keep coming up with two.
Here is
It's an efficiency apartment.
It had
that
2
Two
bedrooms.
bedrooms. It's in
That
the
can
floor.
have
It's in the
2
floor
people
plan.
in it. That's.
No,
Bedroom.
And your code says an accessory can only be one bedroom. Your
It
own
is 2
code. read
bedrooms.
the code.
Chairman,
It's-
can I ask permission that you would finish and close the public hearing?
Yeah.
No, you can't. Why? Because it makes you look
I'm
bad.
making a
It makes
request.
you look bad that because it.
Making a request.
Okay,
No,
does any
you
of the
can't shut up.
board
I'm a
members
taxpayer.
have
I'm
any
a
further
taxpayer. You're not gonna
questions?
shut me up. I've never been involved in anything in this village. This is the only thing I've ever talked about. Your code says it's a 2-bedroom. You cannot have a 2-bedroom as an accessory. Read your code. It's still a 2-bedroom. She advertised it as a 2-bedroom. You had paperwork that it was written down as a 2-bedroom in your own files. We went through those files.
The
Because we
application.
wanted to know
Mrs.
why it was
Pinto,
denied in the
Miss-
past, and it wasn't just the size. It had to do with the fact that it was a 2-bedroom. Changing the closet size is not just the only
Or
thing that needs to
renaming
be.
it as an office.
And so what you just did is you renamed it an office. It's not. She used it as a 2-bedroom. There used to be a baby. I could see it right out my window. They were using it as a 2-bedroom. So she brings somebody else in, then there's going to be another car there. That's what's going to happen. You can't call, because when you call, they say the village tells me that there is nothing they can do unless they see them doing work in the house. So that's what we've been going through for the past several years. So you're doing nothing. You tell us to call the police, but the police tell us to call you. And now you're rewarding somebody
Okay.
who's doing things
Does-
illegal.
All right,
And she's
Mrs.
fine
Timko,
with that.
stop, please. Does any of the board members have any further questions? Go ahead, Jennifer. You're muted.
Yep. Could Brian or Peter just confirm, is a second entrance required, a second exit, emergency exit required for a accessory apartment?
Not just an accessory apartment, any bedroom, period.
Is there two?
There's requirements of height from the opening or egress window to the ground, and that's 14 feet.
And
They-
that's met here.
They meet the requirement. The side
That's
window,
what
the
Yeah.
side window meets the requirement of the 5.3 square feet, 14 feet, no more from the ground.
Just
Yeah.
wanted to confirm.
There is no requirement for a specific fire escape. Most homes have the same situation and they don't have fire escapes because it's not a requirement.
I'm gonna say one thing, and what a disgrace. And I'm not saying anything more. It's a disgrace what this village has become.
Okay, can I have a motion to close the public hearing? From the board members?
I'll make a motion.
Olga, and second by Eileen.
Hey, Jeff, you're gonna do an all in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
But wait, all in favor of?
Of
Closing
closing
the
the
public
public hearing.
Yes.
Any against? So moved. So now, does the board member need more time on this to discuss? Or are we willing to go to a vote?
I don't need more time.
Eileen? You need more time?
Well, on some levels, yes, and other levels, no.
I'm with you. I'm with you. It may not change my gut though.
I know.
I mean, if you need the time, take it so that you can make a fair vote.
Tracy, what do you think? Are you ready?
I'm torn.
I know. I think, yeah.
Just if I could caution the board a bit, I think that they've met every requirement. And so if you're not going to pass this, I think you need to put on the record and ask me to prepare a decision in order as to what the issue was in terms of what the code is asking this applicant to provide, so that you're clear on, and I'm clear on the decision.
All right, I'm ready to vote.
Oh,
All right, so we're gonna go,
Well, Stephanie, what do you mean by that?
I
So-
was just going to ask that.
Excuse me, one second. Did we close the public hearing?
yes, close the
Yes.
public hearing.
Judy
Margaret,
Lasasso is still on. There's an applicant, there's someone still on.
No, they're
we have
still
a-
on. They're part of the meeting. They're muted right now.
Okay. And I'm muted.
Yeah,
right,
what does that mean? That because she meets the code, we have to vote in favor of and not?
no, I didn't say you had to vote in favor of. I said you have to articulate the reasons if you're not going to approve it, or if you are going to approve it. You have to articulate the reasons why, and that needs to be substantiated by our code and our code requirements, because this
Okay.
person had the right to ask, right? And
Mhm.
and you have a right to say, well, whatever your reasons are, but it can't just be, you feel sorry for the neighbor. You have to articulate it for me. Because
Stephanie,
they have rights too.
Stephanie, if every homeowner asked for an accessory apartment and they all met the requirements, would we be obligated then to grant every homeowner in Buchanan an accessory apartment? At what?
No, you wouldn't, because part of this code talks about the neighborhood and parking and how many, and so you can take that into account. You just need to put that on the record as to why, if that's the way you're going to go, why you're going that way. That's all I'm saying, because there's some new people who might not understand that you just don't, say, no, I have to prepare a decision in order on this, and so I need your
Stephanie, can you
guidance.
clarify a question? If it does not get voted that it is an accessory apartment, nothing's going to change in that
Correct.
home, correct?
That appears to be correct. And that's why earlier I had thought and put it out there that it probably gives the village more access to inspection than not. I mean, you
And-
can still, the neighbors, if nothing changes, the neighbors can still complain and say, hey, there's a person living there, or there's a person in the basement, and it will continue on. But there becomes a time, I think, when you can't complain every week.
And if it doesn't pass, the building inspectors do not have the right to get in there and inspect, correct?
Well, somebody could make a complaint, the building inspector can go in, but what happened in the past in this particular situation is the prior building inspector got in, and then there was another complaint, and they wanted them to go in 5 times, and I got calls from attorneys who said, this is becoming harassment. And so what we said to this applicant, you know, and that really happened, and I was sort of like, yeah, you know, so the building inspector did not go back in, and so then the applicant decided, you know, I guess, to legalize this somehow, which is how we got to where we are now. But you're right, no, it wouldn't change.
And how often will it be inspected if it does approve?
Well, what our code says is in the first year, after the first year, the building inspector inspects and then brings it back to the planning board, who can then, if you approve it, you can give another time period between 1 and 3 years, nothing more than 3 years. So you could say every year. But
So can we
importantly, in
put-
this code, it does give the building inspector the right to inspect upon reasonable notice. So in my opinion, if somebody complained to Peter about something and could substantiate it in some way, he then calls the owner and says, I have the right to inspect because you've issued an accessory apartment, which then opens up the owner to an inspection if there are complaints. So, I mean, it has to be reasonable, and I'm not sure how this will move forward.
So-
But all I was beginning to ask you was, please articulate, you know, don't just say no. Let me know the basis if it's no. Let me know the basis if it's yes, because I have to prepare a decision on what.
Can it be approved and can you say with inspection every year?
Can I, so Tracy, New York State requires an annual inspection of an accessory apartment. Stephanie's referring to the renewal of the approval to have an accessory apartment can be 1, 2, or 3 years by the board.
Right.
New York State requires an annual inspection of that accessory apartment. We will inspect
But you
annually.
can inspect more often
If reason being is proven that we had to go in.
And we can stipulate that it would have to come back to the planning board in a year for renewal. Not,
Oh, it has to the first year. And then the planning board can extend it and say, you know what? You know, Peter, keep inspecting every year, but we're going to give you 3 years. It looks like it's going well. Or you can say, we want you back every year
Every year.
to renew it. Right.
And in that time, the neighbors can approach the zoning board to talk about the parking situation.
Yes, of course.
I'm sorry to, Chairman, the police chief is on as well, if you want to ask him a question.
Oh, great, good.
Shane, you can unmute yourself.
Hello,
Good evening, chief. How are
Good
you?
evening, Shane.
good evening.
Good. Can you give us any information on parking issues or any complaints for 172nd Street?
Well, I don't have any documentation with me, but I know we've done extensive looking into it. And there's no parking issue. The road is wide. I measured it with the building inspector. So if you parked cars side by, 2 cars on each side directly across from each other, you'd have absolutely no trouble getting a fire truck, ambulance, or anything up that road. Even probably 2. So it seems like there's no issues with parking there. Any other time, there's only a couple cars on the road, if that. So I think, I don't think there's any issues that we've ever seen. I can't recall of any.
How about any issues with the daycare they were talking about down the street? Or
Yeah, no, we've done looking into that. Nothing, we even talked to some neighbors in the area of that daycare, and or at least one definitely, and there was no issue. We haven't observed any. And we just did that. We looked into it pretty extensively recently as well.
Double parking the wrong way on the street. It happens every day. People flying up the street doing 40 miles an hour to drop the kids off and pick the kids up. I don't understand.
Marcus, that the public hearing is closed. They shouldn't be able to speak.
Sorry, I just muted him.
So I'm thinking when you have drop off and pick up at a daycare, there has to be movement. There has to be cars on the road. I can't imagine that there isn't congestion.
Her property extends all the way to Third Street.
Go ahead, Chief, Chief,
To
respond to
have her
that.
jump off on the back of her property on Third Street. She can easily make parking on
The
Third Street.
police chief is speaking now. Sorry, the police chief is speaking. Go ahead, chief.
I mean, there's no, it's not an overwhelming daycare. It's, you know, if the couple cars go up, drop off, it's all different times. Again, my officers have done extensive looking into it. You know, if there has been problems, we correct them. But that's any road, and anywhere. So, you know, but there's nothing that's out of hand, if that's what you guys are asking me.
So there's no public safety issue there with the parking then?
No.
Okay.
I have pictures where the road is completely blocked.
Mr. Timko, stop. The public hearing is closed. We are talking with the board members and the members of the village officials. Does any of the board members have anything for the chief of police? Thank you, chief.
No problem.
Okay, so
Marilyn Donahue can't bark at back.
Mr. Timko, the public hearing is closed again. Please do not chime in. All right, so we will have a special permit application vote by name, either yay or nay, and you must state what your issue is, so that way the lawyer can draw up the proper paperwork. Eileen, for the application, yay or nay?
I'm going to go with a yay because I feel that the village has more protection for its residents if the applicant has a violation.
Okay. Awilda, yay or nay?
I'm going with a nay because I feel that if Ms. Infante has done with that accessory apartment what she's wanted to do without a permit, I can't imagine what she would do with it. So I'm voting no. And I believe that there is congestion on that block.
Jennifer, yay or nay?
Nay. I believe that additional, I guess I'd go back to the code. I'll read it.
Okay. Tracy, yay or nay? You're muted.
I was taking a deep breath. This is a really difficult one.
Understood. I mean, you had many concerns and you
Yeah.
could just say what you want.
I kind of feel that, you know, like Awilda said, you know, this has been going on for so many years, you know, but like, if all the conditions of the code have been met, and I think that the village can be able to monitor the situation better by being able to get in there and do some inspections, then I think that I'm gonna have to say yay.
Okay, so right now it's 2 yays and 2 nays, and I will have to make the final determination, which will be yay, but be advised that there will be an annual inspection and that there is a course for any violations to go to the village building inspectors. And if there's a police matter, they can also complain to the police. And it's all, it will be all monitored and controlled by the village building department for the application. Is that correct, Stephanie?
He's muted.
I'm sorry. Can you say that again? I was taking notes on who voted yes and who voted no and why.
Oh, I was saying because there is a process where the applicant can get a yearly inspection, and that if there's any violation, they can get reported to the village building inspector, and if there's a police action, they can go to the village police department, and then course of action can be taken.
That is correct.
Is there anything else you need from us,
Me?
Stephanie? Yes.
No, I'm good.
Okay, so the application for the special permit for 172nd Street is approved. 3 yay, 2 nay, so moved. Is there any other issues to be brought to this meeting tonight? Marcus, do you have anything for us?
No, I do not.
Okay, can I have a motion to conclude the meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Eileen, second.
I
Second.
second.
I'd
Second
like to
by,
thank the board for your consideration. I know it was a difficult decision, and I think very thoughtful consideration. So thank you
but
all. very
Mr. McCarthy, you have to understand that parking is one of the big concerns. So I would try to get everything into that driveway and less stuff on the street, because you're only gonna have.
all of that, and obviously will take that into consideration. But thank you very much.
But
Have a
as
good
far as the public, they need to go back to the zoning and try to fix some of these things, so that way we have better protection for the village. There is an issue there. All right, that adjourns the meeting. Thank you very much.
Good night, everyone.
Good
Good
night.
night. Thank you.